Welcome, Rabbi Yisai, to Chazara Shiur on Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Vav is a continuation from Mishnah Zion. Mishnah Vav discusses when you give food to someone else to watch, part of it gets ruined or gets lost, and when you give it back, you give back a little bit less. So let's go right ahead. In last Mishnah, we actually spoke about food. Now we're speaking about liquid. So before we start, let's go over some ideas from Damas. Actually, the only thing that we need to go over is a loig. A loig is a measurement of liquid. It's a little bit. It's approximately around the size of a small water bottle. Okay, so let's go right ahead to the Mishnah. Mishnah starts off with a case where the mafkid gives a barrel of wine to his friend to watch, and the friend mixes it into his entire cellar, all barrels all together, one big thing, mishmash. So he mixes it in. Now comes the time of paying back, and there's a little bit of a problem. Part of the wine gets absorbed in the barrel. So if you're going to give back the same amount, well, part of it's in the barrel, so I can't give it back to you. So how much should you give back? You need to give back a little bit less. How much should you give back? So Chacham say you should give back 1/6. That means divide the barrel into 6 sections and deduct 1 section. Give back 5/6 and deduct 1/6. Chacham say deduct 1/5. That means divide it into 5 sections and deduct 1 of those 5 sections. And as you can see in the picture, 1/5 is more than 1/6. That means according to Rabbi Yehuda, you deduct more than according to Chachamim, to Tanakama. Okay, now next case. What if the Baal Bayis, the mafkid, gave a barrel of oil to his friend to watch, and the friend again mixed it in together with all the barrels. So when it comes time to pay back, the Shaiva should only give back 97%. And the case that the Mishnah uses is 97 loig out of 100. And he deducts 3 loig. Why? Why 3 loig? Says the Mishnah, 1.5 for sediments and 1.5 for absorption. It means part of the oil becomes pieces, part of the seed or the peel becomes pieces and it sinks to the bottom of the barrel, and now you're left with less liquid. So part of it gets absorbed in the barrel, part of it becomes sediments. So when you give it back just 97%, not the full amount, minus 1.5 for sediments, minus 1.5 for absorption. What if the mafkid gave pure oil? So there's not going to be any sediments. It was already filtered. So then you don't deduct that 1.5 loig. What if the barrels that they used were old, so they're not going to absorb anything right now? Then he does not deduct the 1.5%, the 1.5 loig for absorption. Says Rabbi Yehuda, and now Rabbi Yehuda segues on to a little bit of a different topic. Till now we were talking about a mafkid and a shemer, somebody watching something, and now we're moving on to a buyer and seller. And says Rabbi Yehuda, even someone who sells oil to his friend for the whole year, meaning the lekeach goes over to the buyer goes over to the seller, and he tells him, look, I want to make sure that I have oil for the whole year. Right? I don't want anyone else to buy it up. I don't want it to go out of stock. So let me put $10 in my account, or $100, let's say, $100 in my account, and I'll pay for the oil. I'll prepay for all of it right now for a barrel of oil, and throughout the year you'll pay me. You'll give me little bit by little of oil. Okay, so if that's the case, then so the lekeach is saying, I'm paying you for $10 of oil for 10 loig throughout the year. Then the lekeach accepts upon himself that I'm only going to be getting 98.5%. 98.5 look. And as you can see, this last little jug is a little bit smaller because he's getting only 98.5%. Why? Because he accepts upon himself that when he's paying for the barrel, 1.5% of it is going to become sediments. It's going to become pieces at the bottom. You're not going to be able to buy it. So, and that is the end of the Mishnah. Let's open up our Gemara. Let's learn the Mishnah inside. Please, even if you're watching this later, open up your Gemara, follow along, read it along. All your whole body should be involved in learning. Okay, we're holding the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Mem Amud Aleph. Zog the Mishnah, Yotzie. So this is talking about the same case as last Mishnah. If the Baal Bayis gave food to his friend to watch, and now it's time to give it back, Yotzie should take out for him, meaning the shemer should deduct shtus, 1/6, liyin for wine. Rabbi Yehuda says, chomesh, you should deduct 1/5. Now, next case, Yotzie Yotzie lo shloisha lugim shemen. You should deduct, for him the shemen should deduct 3 lug of oil. Lemea per every 100 lug. Why that amount? Loy gumachza shmarim, 1.5 loy for sediments. Loy gumachza bela, 1.5 loy for what gets absorbed in the barrel. If it was pure oil, so there's no sediments, there's no pieces, then you don't deduct for what would have become sediments. If they were old barrels, you don't deduct what would have become, what would have been absorbed in the barrels. Rabbi Yehuda goes on to a little bit of a different topic. Rabbi Yehuda says, even someone who sells pure oil to his friend, for throughout all the days of the year, he accepts upon himself, meaning the buyer accepts upon himself, he accepts upon himself that there's going to be 1.5 loig per every 100 loig missing. That's going to become sediments. He accepts upon himself to lose 1.5 loig. Rashi, we're holding Rashi of the Mishnah. Liyn, for wine. So this is right at the beginning of the Mishnah. So Rashi explains what's the case of the Mishnah. What are we talking about? Says Rashi, Liyn, for wine. That's like yayin. If the mafkid deposited by the shomer wine, if he deposited by him, that's Liyn, if he deposited by him wine, the erba and he mixed it in with the rest of his wine, the barrels absorb 1/6 of the wine. Even someone who sells, etc. The same way they said by someone who the same way they said by someone who deposits. The same thing they said it about a seller. Then what? Someone who sells oil to his friend. The nice and he gives from within his barrels. When he constantly sustains himself from it. So you're paying the balabaya, you're paying the moicher some money, but you're not buying the full thing the way how it is right now. You're like, he's also going to take some of it. So meaning he's going to take and he's going to put back, and he's sustaining himself the whole time from it. So he needs to give you a certain amount at the end of the year, right? Throughout the whole year. And this oil is pure. The buyer accepts upon himself to deduct loy for him, loy b'machza, 1.5 loy machmas shmarim because of sediments. He's going to only get, at the end of the day, he's only going to get 98.5%, not all the 100%. He's going to deduct 1.5. Lemea per 100, lemea lug for 100 loy. Let's go back to the Gemara. Okay, here we go. All right, Zog the Gemara. Where are we? Zog the Gemara, Sugya Lamed. So the Mishnah was talking about a case where the mafkid gives a barrel of wine to his friend to watch, and part of it gets absorbed in the barrels. So Chacham say, when you give it back, you should deduct 1/6, and Rabbi Yehuda says, when you give it back, you should deduct 1/5. Zog the Gemara, but like they're not really arguing. Really, they're not really arguing. Chacham are speaking about their place, and Rabbi Yehuda is talking about their place. Ki asrei, they're talking about their place. Asar means a place. Ki asrei like his place. Ki asrei like his place. What's the difference in their places? In the place of Chacham, they would smear the inside of the barrels with wax, so it wouldn't absorb a lot, and that's why when you only deduct 1/6. And in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they would smear the inside with pitch, which we're going to explain a little bit later what is pitch. But it's a sealing material. Okay? So since they would smear with pitch, it would absorb more, the barrel would absorb more, and therefore you deduct 1/5, which is a little bit more. If you want, I'll tell you a different answer. Another answer is that it's depending on the earth that they use in the different places to make the jugs for the wine. In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, the earth that they use to make the clay absorbs a lot. And in the place of Chachamim, the earth that they use actually absorbs a lot more. Let's learn this part inside the Gemara. Here we go. We're holding the Gemara on the bottom of Mem Amud Aleph. 4 lines from the bottom. Zog the Gemara v'loy pligi, a small easy piece of Gemara v'loy pligi, and they're not arguing. Marki asrei, the master goes according to his place. Umarki asrei, and the master goes according to his place. But asrei the mar, in the place of the master, in the place of Tanakama, chafu, they would smear bikira with wax. V'loy mayetz tvei, and it wouldn't absorb a lot. Therefore, you only do after 1/6. But asrei the mar, in the place of the master, the chafu b'kufra, they would smear with pitch. Umayetz tvei, and it would absorb a lot. Another answer. I'll give you another answer. I'll give you another answer. Mishum gargishta. It's because of the earth that they make the jugs out of, the clay. Over here in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, it absorbs a lot. The clay absorbs a lot. The earth that they use absorbs a lot. And this one, in the place of Tanakama, the earth that they use doesn't absorb so much. Rashi, Chafu Bekira, first Rashi in the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom of Rashi on the page. They would smear the inside of the barrels b'shayva with wax, just like we do b'zefes with pitch. So actually, in Rashi's place, they would do just like Rabbi Yehuda. The kufra, what's kufra? Zefes pitch, which we're going to explain soon. Gargishta, what's the answer of the gargishta? The earth. What does that mean? Karka, the earth, she'oisin mimena, that we make from it, hachaviyos, the barrels. This one, what does that mean? What are we talking about? But Asrei de Rabbi Yehuda, this one, in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, Mayatz Tfei, it sucks out more, the earth, the earthenware, the clay, the barrels, they suck, the jugs that are made of clay in Rabbi Yehuda's place, they suck out more me'ahi than that, the Asrei de Tanakama, than the place of Tanakama. On to the next piece of Gemara. And here comes something very interesting. Very interesting story. Here we go. Okay. But Asrei de Rabbi Yehuda, in the place of Rabbi Yehuda. Now this is not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was in the Mishnah. He's a Tanam. This is Rabbi Yehuda. He's an Amoira. So in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they would measure a barrel with a certain small measurement called a kuzi. A kuzi was, there were 48 kuzi in a barrel. Okay, so you have over here 48 kuzi, 48, let's say, like cups. Let's say, or 48 cups in a barrel. Now, how much would it cost to buy a barrel? It would cost 6 zuz to buy a full barrel. Now, Zakti Gemara Rabbi Yehuda became a storekeeper, and he would buy wine, and he would start selling. Now, he bought the whole thing for 6 zuz, but he would sell, for a little bit more money, he would sell 6 kuzi for 1 zuz. Okay? That means, let's do the math for a second. If he's buying the whole barrel for 6 zuz, and we divided it into 6 parts, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So that means each row is 1 kuzi. He's buying for 1 zuz. Okay? So Rabbi Yehuda is buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's buying 8 kuzi for 1 zuz. 1 zuz, 2 zuz, 3 zuz, 4 zuz, 5 zuz, 6 zuz. And now he's selling a little bit more expensive. He's selling 6 zuz per 6 kuzi per 1 zuz. Okay? I hope you were able to follow that. But in short, if you didn't, he bought a barrel for 6 zuz. Okay? He bought 48 kuzi for 6 zuz, and now he's selling 6 kuzi per zuz. So now, how many kuzi does he need to sell in order to make back his money? Very simple. First 6 is 1 zuz, second zuz, another zuz, another zuz, another zuz, another zuz, another zuz. 6 times 6 is how much? Very good, you got it 36. He sells 36 kuzi and he makes back 6 zuz. Beautiful. He made his money back. Now he covered his losses. Now, okay, fine, good. Now, how much is left? He has 12 left. What happens with this 12? Well, 8 of it, which is a 6th, becomes absorbed in the barrels, like we learned in the Mishnah. Right? In the beginning, we divided this into 6 lines, right? Each one is 8 kuzi. That means 1/6 is 8 kuzi. So 8 kuzi becomes absorbed in the barrels. And how much is he left with? He's left with 4 kuzi for profit. Okay, that's how much he was left with. And this was Rabbi Yehuda's pricing. From the Gemara, we learned, Shmuel said that when you're selling food or things that are necessary for life, and you're making a profit off of it, right? Because every seller needs to make a little bit of a profit. You shouldn't make more than a sixth profit. So, if you're allowed to make a sixth profit, why didn't Rav Yehuda make a sixth profit? He's only making profit of 4 kuzi. He can make up to 8 kuzi profit, which is a sixth. You can make up to 6. That means you should be making 8 kuzi profit. Why is he only making 4 kuzi profit? And for the Gemara, listen, the 4 kuzi that he's left with, plus the barrel, plus the shmarim, the sediments that are on the bottom of the bottle, that you could do something with it. They're not really worth a lot, but they're worth something. Altogether is his profit. So he's not making so much less than 6. Frag the Gemara, 1 second. If so, then if he's making 4 kuzi plus barrel plus shmarim, right? Because he's making the barrel, that means together with the 6 zuz, he purchased the barrel itself. So now he has the barrel itself, 4 kuzi, and the shmarim. Okay, so now if you're making, so 1 second, if you're making all that, if you're making 4 kuzi plus barrel plus shmarim, then that's more than 6. That's more than a sixth profit. And for the Gemara, no. He actually has expenses for his business. He has what kind of expenses? One expense is he has hassle. Hassle means that he needs to pay for the labor, for the work. Okay, so that's an expense he needs to pay for. Another answer that he has expenses for is Barz Naisa. What's Barz Naisa? There's 2 answers in Rashi. What's Barz Naisa? Either Barz Naisa is a marketer, a peddler, someone who takes what he has to sell. Someone takes the wine and he goes knocking on doors. Do you want to buy wine? Here we have wine to buy. Such delicious wine, such a good price. Basically like a marketer. Okay. Another explanation for the word Barz Naisa is someone that can make a faucet, a tap from the barrel. Okay, so being that he has these expenses, so he's not really making all this pure profit. He actually has expenses. So this profit, the 4 kuzi, barrel and shmarim, minus the tircha and Barz Naisa, minus the hassle and the spout maker or marketer, whatever it is. So all that, it ends up being that Rav Yehuda made 1/6 profit. Okay, I hope that was all clear with all the math. If not, watch it again. I'm sure you're going to figure it out if you watch it again and put a little bit of thought and concentrate. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara inside. We're holding the second to last line. Ba'asrei de Rav Yehuda, in the place of Rav Yehuda. Zog the Gemara, Ba'asrei de Rav Yehuda, in the place of Rav Yehuda, Ramu, they would measure Arboin v'tamni kuzi, 48 kuzi, bidano in a barrel. Now, how much would a barrel cost? Azil dana, a barrel would cost, a barrel would go, b'shisa zuzi for 6 zuz. Poris Rav Yehuda, now Rav Yehuda spread out, he went and became a businessman, and he sold shisa bezuzah. He sold 6, meaning each 6 kuzi, he sold for a bezuzah for a zuz. Next Amud, brand new Amud base. So now, if he's selling 6 kuzi per zuz, thou take away tlasim b'shisa 36 b'shisa for the 6 zuz, in order for him to make his money back. Pashule, so it's remaining for him after he sells 36. Pashule, it's remaining for him. Tveisar, 12 kuzi. Dal, remove. Tmanya, 8 kuzi. Shtusi of the 6th that becomes absorbed in the barrel. Pashulahu, so it's left for him. Arba, 4 kuzi. Frag the Gemara, the Amar Shmuel, and Shmuel Dach said, Hamistaker, someone who gains money, someone who makes profit, Al Yistaker Yesed Al Shtus shouldn't make more than a 6th profit. So if you're allowed to make a 6th profit, why shouldn't Rav Yehuda be making more? He should be making a 6th. Why is he making less? And for the Gemara, he has expenses. Ika Gulfe, he has the barrel itself, Ushmaria, and the sediments. So 4 kuzi, plus the actual barrel that he gets to keep now. And the sediments, that's the bottom of the barrel, that equals him more profit. Frag the Gemara, Iachi, if so, Nafish lay it makes for him, it gains for him, it goes up for him, tvei nishtos, more than a sixth. And for the Gemara, well, he has expenses. Ika tirche, he has hassle, he has labor that he needs to pay for. Udmei barz naisa, and the money of a barz naisa, as we're going to learn in a moment what that is in Rashi. But being that he has these expenses, so he's not actually making all profit. He's not making, so, he has the 4 kuzi, plus the barrel, plus the shmarim, minus these expenses, so it ends up being that it comes out that he only makes a 6th profit. Rashi, back on Mem Omid Beis, Rashi, the bottom of the page. Ba'asrei de Rav Yehuda, 3 lines from the bottom. Ba'asrei de Rav Yehuda, in the place of Rav Yehuda, Zok Rashi. This is milsa ba'apei nafshehi. This is a thing. This is something by itself. It's not continuation from before. V'lav amasnisin koyin. It doesn't go back on the Mishnah. It's not a raya or a question or anything on the Mishnah. Ramu, they would measure arbain v'tamne kuzi b'dana. They would measure 48 cups or kuzi in a barrel. Midaktana, there was a small measurement. I said there was b'mkoyma in his place of in the place of Rav Yehuda. She'arbain v'shmoina, that 48 of it, 48 kuzi, mimalin as a chavis fill up a barrel. Okay, azil. Dana b'shisa. A barrel goes for 6 zuz. B'shisha zuzim for 6 zuz. Hoisan im keres b'yachad. It was all sold together. The whole barrel with all the kuzi, with the whole thing package was sold for 6 zuz. B'mais habatzir in the harvest when the wine were just fresh. It was just fresh. Obviously, Rav Yehuda shisa b'zuzah. Rav Yehuda spread out and became business, and he sold 6 kuzi per zuz. Nasa Rav Yehuda Chavani, Rav Yehuda became a storekeeper, and he would sell them 6 kuzi b'zuz, 6 kuzi, 6 cups per zuz. Next page, next Talmud. Dal plus neshisa, remove 36 kuzi. Remove 36 kuzi. B'shisa zuzi, for the 6 zuz shekna, they bought it. Pashut Reisar, so it's remaining how much after you make back your money? You're remaining 12. Pashut Reisar, it's remaining 12. Dal Tmanya should say remove 8 of the 6th. Shel Memches of the 48. Remove 8, which is a 6th of 48. Shederech L'chaser, because its way is to become less. Blias L'chaser B'blias HaKankan, with the absorption of the jug. Because it's not, like it says in our Mishnah, Yotzie shtos liyayin, you should deduct a 6th for wine. Pashulai, so now after deducting the 6th, which is 8 kuzi, Pashulai l'schara is left for him, for his profit, for his reward, 4 kuzi. Shmuel said, someone who gains, someone who profits, bidvarim, in things, sheyesh b'hem chayin nefesh, that there is life sustenance in them. Next Rashi, al yistaker yisrael shtus, he shouldn't gain more than a 6th. Zakt Rashi, ha shtus, but a 6th. Yishtaker, you're allowed to make. Frag the Gemara, v'lama lo yishtaker, Rav Yehuda, why shouldn't Rav Yehuda make profit ad shtus up until the 6th? Why is he making less? And for the Gemara, ilka gulfei v'shmarya, he has the barrel and the sediments. Mishtaker, who he is gaining, hakankan, the actual jug, v'ashmarim, and the sediments, shalaka hakoil b'vavzuz, that he bought everything, the whole barrel, all the kuzi, and the shmarim, everything, he bought all with 6 zuz. So now he's left with 4 kuzi, plus the actual barrel, and the shmarim. So that's his profit. The neighbor is nice, the money of a berz nice. What does it mean, berz nice? Zakt Rashi? He gives money to a storekeeper to sell his goods, to actually sell this wine, to go out and sell it, get it sold. And this businessman, he takes it out, and he announces a love about it, b'chutzos, in the surroundings. Karznaisa, where does the word come from? Karznaisa comes from the word lashon karza, comes from the term announcement. Like Isaac pointed out in class that we had such a word earlier in our perek. Achrazta. Achrazta also comes from the word announcement. Lashon acher, another pshat is, another term It says Rashi, another meaning to the word Barznaisa, Lashmacher. Umnos yesh, there's a skill. Oh, we jumped. Okay, umnos yesh, there's a skill that the kivas barza in making a hole, in puncturing a hole for a spout. Barza means a spout. The chavis shalcheres in a barrel of earthenware. The tzarich l'tein schar, and you need to give payment for that person that's going to make the hole. So you have expenses. And with that, we finish this sugya entirely. But the next sugya is actually a very short sugya, so we're going to learn it and we're going to add it in with this Chazara Shiur. So let's go right ahead. Sugya Lamed Aleph. Now we go on to a later part of the Mishnah where it speaks about the oil. Okay? So the Mishnah said that if the barrel was a pure barrel of oil, then you don't deduct for sediments. If the barrel was an old barrel, so it's not going to absorb anything, then you don't deduct for absorbing. Now the Mishnah is actually going to focus on the second line of that. That if it's old barrels, then it's not going to absorb anything. Frag the Gemara, well, is it possible for it not to absorb anything? It's impossible, the loy bala, that's not going to absorb anything. And for the Gemara, two answers. Number one, Rav Nachman answers, we're talking about old barrels that were smeared with pitch. Okay, what's pitch? We said we're going to explain it later. Pitch, we explained in class, is a very gooey and sticky material while it's hot, and then it hardens and it seals. Like you'll use it in construction, like maybe on wood or something to seal off a certain area. It's like a black, very, very sticky thing. Sometimes you'll see it actually on streets. Sometimes they use it to patch up a street between bricks or stuff like that. So when it's boiling hot, it's very gooey and sticky and thick. But then it hardens and it seals it up very, very well. Or sometimes in commercial piping, huge pipes, they don't want it to leak, so they seal it with pitch, with this black gooey substance. Okay, so again, Rav Nachman's answer is that the reason why it doesn't absorb anything is because it's smeared with pitch. Abaya says, no, actually, in fact, even if it's not smeared with pitch, old barrels, once they're already absorbed, once they're fully loaded, once the wood of the barrel, let's say, is fully loaded with wine, it's not going to absorb anymore. And therefore, if it's old barrels, they're not going to absorb anything. That is it. That's the entire sugya. Tiny sugya. Let's learn it inside. I've been in the Mishnah Megalant. We are holding 6 lines from the top of the page on Mem on the base. If it was pure oil, you don't deduct sediments, etc. That means we're referring to this next sentence also, that if it was old barrels, then you don't deduct for absorption. Okay, and that's what actually the Gemara is focusing on. Frag the Gemara, it's impossible, the loy bala, that's not going to absorb. And for the Gemara, Rav Nachman answered, it's taught in a case where the barrels were smeared. We're smeared with pitch, so they're actually not going to absorb anything. The pitch seals them off. Abaya says, afilu tema, you could even say, they were not smeared with pitch, even if they're just pure wood. But the tone, once they are loaded, the type of tone is loaded. Once they are loaded up, meaning once they already absorbed, they're not going to absorb anymore. Now, since that was a short sugya, in class we actually learned a very easy and short taisus on it. As a bonus, I'll add it in also over here. But again, it's very easy and simple. Frag taisus, this doesn't make sense. Earlier in our Gemara, I'll go back for a second. Okay. Earlier in our Gemara, we learned that in Rabbi Yehuda's place, they would smear with pitch, and that's why it would absorb more. That's why you deduct 1/5. So now, 1 second. Where are we? So now, 1 second. How could you say that it won't absorb anything? Why? And Rav Nachman says, because it's smeared with pitch. What? Didn't you just say a few lines ago that because it's smeared with pitch, it's going to absorb more than even wax? This doesn't make sense. Is it going to absorb or is it not going to absorb? Simple question, asked Taisus. And for Taisus, no. Over there, we were talking about new barrels. New barrels are smeared with pitch, absorb a lot. They actually absorb more than wax. And that's why Rabbi Yehuda said that you deduct a fifth. New barrels that are smeared with pitch absorb, and they absorb a lot. But old barrels, because we're talking about old barrels that are smeared with pitch, they actually don't absorb anything. That's Taisus' first answer. Taisus' second answer is, earlier in the Gemara, we were talking about wine. Now we're talking about oil. That if you have a barrel, an old barrel, smeared with pitch, and you put in oil, then it's not going to absorb anything. Over there, we're talking about wine. Wine is not going to absorb into the barrel when it's smeared with pitch. But oil is not going to absorb. Very easy and simple Taisus. And very geschmack Taisus. Let's learn that inside Taisus. Let's see if we can do that. I think this is the first Taisus I'm learning on a Chazara Shiur. But Merkava is not yet offering translations on Taisus, so we're going to have to learn it just without the translations here. I'm going to translate it as we read. Zok Taisus bin Zufafin Shanu. We learned in a case that's talking about when they're smeared with pitch. Zok Taisus, Frek Taisus. Vim Taimar is a keyword for Frekt Taisus, the question. Vim Taimar, and if you're going to say Frek Taisus, Kol Shekain, how much more so the Bala Tfei, that's going to absorb more? Because we said earlier that barrels are smeared with pitch absorb more. Like we say earlier, but Asra the Mar in the place of the master, Chafu B'Kufra, they smeared with pitch, the Mayat Tfei, that it absorbs a lot. So 1 second, earlier you said when you smear with pitch, it absorbs a lot. Over here you're saying it doesn't absorb at all. What's going on? And for Taisus, Via Shleimar is a keyword for answer in Taisus. Via Shleimar also in Rashi. And anywhere you're going to learn. Via Shleimar, and you could say, and for Taisus, the Hainu Chodosh, that was talking about new barrels. New barrels that smears with pitch, that absorbs a lot. Avol Yashan, but old barrels, Shekvar Bala, that already absorbed previously, Eine Bele Yeser doesn't absorb anymore. Inami, or also I could give you another answer. Inami always is another answer. Hasam over there, earlier in the Gemara, Hasam Yain over there we were talking about wine. Avol Hacha B'Shemen, but over here we're talking about oil. Loi Bala, oil doesn't absorb Kevan Shel Yashan since the barrels are old. So since the barrels are old and they're smeared with pitch, and you're pouring oil into them, therefore it doesn't absorb anything. Wine, maybe, yeah, that's what we spoke about earlier. Here we're talking about oil. And with that we conclude these two sugyas, the Mishnah and two sugyas, and a Taisus, Hatzlacha Rabba, and Mashiach now.